Productive Pastor 115, don't waste a conference. Welcome back, friends. What's going on? It's Chad here. Another episode of Productive Pastor going on. It's the place online where we talk about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. And this episode found its basis in my own working notes. I'm going to talk about that later on. But I was at a conference last week, so I didn't get a new episode. I was on the road for 9 days, I think. It's kind of cool. Got a couple days to myself in New Orleans. Saw a band I've been listening to for 25 years. Then met some coworkers, hopped on a plane, and went up to the School of Congregational Development in Chicago for a while. It's a United Methodist conference about church development, about growing churches, about all sorts of things. Then I had a couple of days to hang out with other people who have my job from all across the United States. It was righteous. Let me just use that word in the full Southern California sense, but also in a holy sense. But as I'm doing that, I'm realizing for years I've been developing a system to make the most of conferences, but it changed up some, and I made some changes and some adaptations to my own approach to it. And all week long, I've been seeing the benefits of this approach. It's great. So a couple quick changes to things, but we're going to have this conversation. How do you not waste a conference? Because in ministry, conferences, that's kind of a thing we do. We go to them. I go to workshops, other learning events, that sort of stuff. You can even do them online now, which I'm not a wild fan of, but sometimes it's the best way for you to find out what you need to find out. So that's what we're talking about in this episode. So you can cruise over the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/115 to get the show notes. Got some killer stuff in there. It's also where you can pick up a link to join the Productive Pastor email. You can pick up the Becoming Productive course or the Trello for Ministry course. But let's get straight into the conversation, because that's what you came here to talk about. How do you not waste a conference? So this is the problem. Conferences can be like an information fire hose for people in ministry. And those can cause a couple of different problems. One of the problems can just be, you just found out all sorts of cool stuff. And so what do you do, or how do you learn from it? How do you apply it in a practical way to your ministry setting? We also can get a little bit of, what did I want to call it? Let's call it future vomiting. That's a little... That might be a little bit graphic, but the future vomit when we come back from a conference and we're excited because it had good worship, we got to hang out with friends, all sorts of stuff, and we then can overwhelm our staff and other leaders in our church. And we can also enter into this destructive pattern where we seek to change every single thing based off of this energy we got from 2 or 3 days of being with other ministry leaders and hearing from people that you might have been very excited to hear about that you don't normally get a chance to hear from or interact or whatever like that. And the future vomiting can cause all sorts of chaos and frustration. That's the problem I want to focus on with this. And I wanted to be really deliberate inside of my own experience. And I made some changes inside. I'm going to share this strategy with you about how to not waste a conference. So the first thing, before you get there, you need to establish a note-taking system. Hopefully you already have a good note-taking system of some sort. I believe that there's something just very, very important about taking good notes. It is a fantastic strategic productivity practice. Just have a note-taking system. Now, you can be either digital or analog. For the last few years, I've lived completely in digital land using my iPad, the Apple Pencil, and the Good Notes app. I started in version 4. I'm now in version 6. But every single thing was digital. But lately, and I've got a video coming out about this on my YouTube channel, I've begun feeling the pull back into analog. Probably because I love Post-it notes and note cards and that sort of thing. But I'm flirting with the idea of maybe being in a hybrid system and realizing there's a certain place where analog just makes more sense. And so I'm going to proceed assuming an analog system, because that's what I did. That's not the only way you can do it, but that's what I did this past week, and you'll see why this might have mattered, because there's a couple things. If I could do this on Good Notes, I would be 100% in Good Notes, but I can't do it in Good Notes. So for me, analog turned out to be the best way. This is what matters, why the note-taking system, that sort of thing, is just so important, because learning isn't learning if it cannot be used. the first way you can waste any sort of a learning experience, what it is if you can't do anything with what you've learned, if you're depending just on your own mind to remember every single thing, the likelihood of it being useful or helpful later on down the road is slim to none. That's what I've experienced. So I'm going to separate this out into two kind of broader seasons, one of during the conference and then two after the conference. So underneath during the conference, and I'm assuming you're going into this with a note-taking system, write down notes about the things. Now, you might be outlining the entire talk. I really don't do that. That's too much for me. But to mark down the things that you feel like are useful to your current projects and concerns. This is one way we stay away from the future vomit, is we focus on the current. No, I'm going to talk about the cool future stuff in a little bit. But mark down the things you feel like are useful to your current projects or concerns. And I had handouts for some of the stuff I didn't have handouts for. They were QR code crazy in a conference center that had horrible and, if at best, and most of the time non-existent internet. So, getting a QR code, getting the slides was not an option for me in that moment. So I just took down my notes in my notebook. And then I had my little book flags that I love. I buy these off of Amazon. I'll put a link in the show notes. I get them direct shipped to me every 3 months. And I have such a massive pile of them. I'm extremely liberal in my usage of them. And I just kind of stash them everywhere in my bag, in my notebook. I've got a backup supply. There's normally 1 or 2 of these in every book I'm reading. I love book flags. And so if I really thought something was interesting, I popped a book flag onto it. If I wanted to think about it some more, I even had some other notes, additional notes, I wrote down a Post-it note and popped that on the page too, just kind of flagging that spot. But mark down the things that are useful to your current projects and concerns, because those are the things that are immediately before you. Those are the things that you're trying to, the most forward motion you can make on those current projects and concerns is going to be the best motion that you can make. It also keeps you away from future vomiting. The second thing during the conference is, connect to a lot of folks, but there's 2 groups of people I think are helpful to connect to, because the networking side of conferences is my favorite side of it. I learn as much in the hallways and befores and afters and during lunches and dinners, that kind of thing, and that I learn while I'm sitting inside any sort of a formal session. So there's 2 groups of people that are useful to connect to. Number one are the people like you. Now, not like you in some ethnic or any of that kind of way. The people that are in the same season of ministry that you are in. And so if you're in a church of 125 and you're trying to figure some stuff out, find some other people that are in the church of 125 or people from maybe the same state as you are. Louisiana has a very interesting, unique, different context. So I was looking for people that were congregational developers professionally that were serving states with a lot of rural churches. That was kind of one of the groups of people I was looking towards. I was also looking for other just congregational developers, period, or anybody that's interested in data and nerding out about that, or anybody that thinks through things through a sociological, missional lens. Those are people like me. So I just listened. If I heard somebody say something I thought was interesting, I just went up to them after the session. Hey, listen, I'm Chad. I'd love to talk with you. Just want to meet you, but this is what I'm doing. Just think it'd be fun to make a connection. And then the second thing is the people that you need. Now, who are the people that you can learn from in this moment? Maybe who are these people that are a couple of steps ahead, not like 15 steps ahead. Like it might be great to hear this plenary or main stage speaker that's written like 20 books and is on all the big podcasts, that kind of stuff. It can be cool to see those folks, make it shake their hand, tell them you're thankful for them. But really, who are the people that are pretty close to where you are right now, but maybe a couple steps ahead that you can learn from, you can find some mentoring from, you can ask questions to, that sort of stuff. And a lot of this I did, I went, pretty old school with this. Number one, I had a stack of business cards with me. Who hands out business cards anymore? Well, I did that week. And then I had a page in my notebook of people to connect with after the fact. And I just wrote down, their name or who they were or where I met them, or sometimes just enough of a memory jog to realize what it was. I think I had one note that said, old girl who knew about cooperative parishes. I knew where she was, that kind of stuff. So I knew I could find her later on down the road. Remember, I'm country, y'all. Sometimes I do things in a country way. But just I try to connect with those 2 groups of people. I gave them my business card, and I made a good enough of a note about who they were that I could find them after the fact online. Those are the things I did during the conference. Now, the things I did after the conference, and this is really where the gumbo is gonna get made here. First thing is this, take an hour or so and transfer your analog notes to whatever permanent system you have. If you're a digital person primarily, drop them in there so you can search them and you can save them. I've talked before about having a working and a keeping system. Episode 61, working and keeping systems. Episode 34, the superpower of working notes. I've got a deliberate system where I save things where I can find them quickly. So I went back through the 15 pages or so of notes I took in my little small, normal size notebook. And I just typed them all out in Evernote, put them out there. I threw a couple keywords. So if I'm trying to find broader subjects, the Evernote search engine would find it after the fact. It's dropped in there now. It's inside of my keeping system. It's safe for future needs. The next thing to do is to process through stuff. Process through those current concerns. Maybe you need to develop an action plan based on your learning, or maybe you need to adapt something you're currently doing to solve this current problem or question or situation. But I just kind of drop it in, process through, make the quick adaptations you might need to make. Maybe you need to develop an action plan based on your learning. Maybe you need to put pause on that for a week or two to kind of think through the stew that's getting made in your head and to change your plan or your strategy for it. The second thing to process through are those future concerns, because, hey, we all have them. We've all got those ideas that we think are awesome one day. We all have those thoughts that we have that we want to hold on to later on. We all have those resources we want to save where we're saying, hey, I might not need this absolutely today, but I could need this or might use this in 6 months. That's the beauty of, having a working and a keeping system. We can separate this stuff out. But process through those concerns, your current concerns and then your future concerns. So they're in your knowledge system so you can use them when you have them and you can apply them to what you're currently doing. The next thing that I did was respond to those contacts. Now, I went through the business cards that I had saved. I went through my notes of people I wanted to reach out to, the people I might have had lunch with, the 2 guys from New Mexico that I met that day. And one of them, a friend of mine, had told me, hey, you need to meet this guy. And we've been trying to find 10 minutes to connect. And I found out I'm going to go to a Cubs game with him that night. And we were, I'm not a small man, 6 foot tall, about 260, broad shoulders. And I was crammed in the back seat of an Uber with 2 other grown men, and I was the smallest one out of all of them for an hour and a half. Me and both of these guys got to know each other really well, so I had their contacts. I saved their phone numbers because we were in a text thread together. But I reached out to them. Everybody who I had on that connect list, when I got in Monday or got home and got back into the office on Monday, I spent 20, 30 minutes and sent out some stuff. I sent out some Facebook friend requests. I sent out some emails, just kind of, hey, great hanging out with you. Thank you so much. Would love to continue the conversation. And if I had a conversation with that person about a certain thing, I made a note of it in that notebook. And so I could be specific in that reach out. And what's wild is I'm, 3 days after the fact, I'm recording this Wednesday, the day before the episode releases. I've got fun, really, really good conversation threads with folks going already, continuing what we talked about. And most of these were people who are on the same level. They're the people that are like me, asking the same questions. We're now getting to think through this stuff together. The last thing I want to tell you to do is to reach out and thank the presenters, especially in workshops. Most of these folks, they might put their email on a slide on the front end of it, or where they work or what they do or their name. You can go find that email address. Hey, email them and tell them thank you for the information, for your time, for your energy, God, for the stewardship of what God's telling them, doing them. Make that connection with them. And then I shot over and found them on Facebook, sent a friend request, and just did the connection point, because those could be the people that you need that are 1 or 2 steps ahead, or they could be a person to call and reach out to if you need some more help with that current situation. Because remember, you planned your workshopping and your conferencing around the current things that you're dealing with. That's also, throw that in there. I didn't have that in my notes, but when you're selecting the workshops, don't go do the cool things that might happen in the future. Go learn about the things you need to figure out right now. I had a great conference experience. I normally like conferences, but I will tell you what, I felt like I gained a lot more out of this one than normal. I have absolutely no pressure whatsoever at all for the future vomit, because I kept things just really situated in the current. That was valuable for me at that conference and where I am and what I'm doing right now. So don't waste your conferences. Hopefully you can pick up some tips from this. You know, the fall's a conference season for people in ministry. There might be some stuff you're heading out to. Hope you make the most of it. So I'm Chad. As always, thanks for hanging out. You know, come find me, Productive Pastor Community on Facebook or on all socials at Rev Chad Brooks. Sign up for the email list. You can do that in the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/115. We'll be back in the next episode. Till then, hope it's good.